So is it helpful for me to talk a little bit about how I started, Laurie? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And then stuff will come out in that which will answer the questions, hopefully. So okay, so I'm Jacqueline Hallows, also known as Mama J. The guys named me Mama J. So that's what shows up on my Zune. And I was 20 odd years in IT and customer services. So I was in a totally different background, and all my career and all my education is in that background. So, I've got a degree and a master's degree and all sorts. So, I was really entrenched into that. And a few things collided together in around about 2013 that had me look at, is there a different way to live life? So there was the housing crash at the time. I lost a lot of money. I actually lost my homes. My father died, and he was an estranged father, and he died and found me, and we had 5 months together, and lots of stuff like this all came about, and I got made redundant. So I wondered, what could I do better in the world, be more of service? I didn't feel that I was of service, and I didn't feel capable of changing society's problems. So I looked around, I retrained, I trained as a counsellor, I did neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, I trained in tapping technique, EFT. So I always like to say anything with a 3-letter acronym and I was on it. So I was obviously searching, and I came across a new understanding called the 3 principles. I went to a coaching program, and I actually didn't care about being a coach by the end of it. I just felt like I wanted a different life experience than the one I was having. And that program had one weekend. It was 6 weekends over 6 months, and it had one weekend which is dedicated to the 3 principles, and the rest of it was all traditional coaching. Different types of people came in, and and the idea was that we feed from this buffet of coaching. And 3 principles weekend was one of the worst weekends of my life. I absolutely hated it. It was George and Linda Pranksky, and my my cohort they were like on a second, so they knew these people, and they were raving about them and said, oh, it's going to be wonderful. It was the second weekend of the program, and and the night before the actual coaching seminar, the 3-day seminar, we went to see this couple in a church hall somewhere across town, and I thought, it's a cult. I couldn't. There were these 2 very calm people sitting at the front of the room in big armchairs, like Sid used to have, and there were all these people and I thought, this is a cult. Can't you see this is a cult? It's really worrying. Anyway, I was a bit jet lagged, so I thought maybe I'm just a bit jet lagged. So the next day we went to the seminar, and George Pranksy told some stories, and I sat there for the whole 3 days, anxious, scared, worried about asking questions, just terrible, just had a terrible time. So I thought, well, you can keep that load of old baloney. So the next thing happened was they used to do mastermind classes, and where like you dial in and you have to listen, well, like this really, you listen, I was going to say you listen to an expert, not me, but you listen to an expert, and it's all part of the qualification. And George Pranksky was running the mastermind, and I was doing some work in a little village in Wales, and I thought, do you know what, I can just work while they're whittering on in the background, but I'll get my credit because I'll have logged in. So I logged in, and bizarrely, of 40 people on that course, only 2 people turned up, me and one other person, and George, and obviously the facilitator. I thought, oh, now I can't leave quietly because they'll know, you know. So I just had my camera off and just listened to them, and they were blathering on about seed banks and the 3 principles and all of these things. And I thought, it's a load of old rubbish. I'm not even going to try and listen. And suddenly George said, Jacqueline, you're very quiet. What did you make of the weekend? And I said, oh, George, I'm so sorry. I don't want to be rude, but it was horrible. I hated it. And he really laughed. And he said, oh, tell me more, tell me more. And I said, well, you know, I was sitting there and I felt anxious and so on. And I told him all my experience of the weekend. And George just kept giggling and asking me more about my experience and so on. And when I came off the call, I thought, this can't be a cult, because he didn't try to persuade me. He didn't try to convince me. He didn't try to tell me that I was wrong or argue with me. He just enjoyed the experience, was laughing at me, and, you know, made me laugh because he thought it was funny. And I felt lighthearted, and I thought, maybe I will have another look at this thing. So life continued, and I was having some private clients, and people were coming to me who were often high up in organizations but had addictions. You know, they were telling me about that they were snorting coke in the bathroom or bursting into tears and couldn't face it and things like that. And at the time I was saying, well, if nothing else works, I'll try this 3 principles malarkey. Anyway, I had a client, so I was doing business networking. You know, you go to lunches and dinners and you hand out your business cards and all of this. And I met someone who you would never expect to see at those places. He was in recovery 3 years he was a heroin addict. He was so bad at one point he would inject heroin into his eyeballs. And he was an offender for all of his life, to feed his habit. And he was 3 years clean through the AA program, and he was the most inspiring person I've ever met in my life. I just thought, wow, who is this man? And he said, I've started a social enterprise, a non-profit, teaching people how to make film and script writing and so on. And I teach people in prison and marginalized communities. So I said, I just was blown away by him. I thought, wow, you know, to have done that, turned your life around like that, I'm so impressed. And I said, how can I help you? So I ended up on his board of directors, voluntary, helping him grow his business. And then he had never been educated, and he was doing, he wanted to do a media and comms degree. And so he needed a support worker because he had some disabilities, and he needed a support worker. So I ended up being his support worker through university. And through him, I met lots of other people in that situation who had had addictions and been in prison and so on. And I would just be standing in the kitchen, because he used to do home detoxes and so on. And I used to be just standing in the kitchen talking to these people and seeing the light switch on in their eyes and seeing them have realizations. And I kept thinking, they're amazing. Like, they're so determined and resilient and like persistent. And yeah, the direction that they were taking that determination and persistent was actually in this murky world, but the value, the skills of determination and persistence were within them, and they could turn that to anything. And I kept sort of talking to them, and I volunteered for 18 months, nearly 2 years. And I did I had a knee operation, and he asked me would I help him make a film about a recovery walk in Birmingham. And I did this recovery walk, and I was interviewing people and asking them their experience of recovery, and you know how they came to be on that walk. And bearing in mind that I still wasn't really into the 3 principles, like I thought it was, I didn't think it was a cult anymore, but I thought it was like, yeah, it's a good thing, but you know, and I certainly didn't know what an insight was. I had no idea what an insight was. People talked about insight all the time, and I just thought, well, I'm not one of them people. I don't have insights. And I was interviewing, and I walked into this park, and it was a beautiful sunny September day. You know, the leaves were just starting to turn. It was just crisp and sunny, and there were all these people sitting around who had addictions, who had been in recovery, were in recovery, you know, all of that, all in the park. And I was drowned in this feeling of love. And I just stood there and looked at them, and I loved them. And I thought, I don't know why, but I have to work with these people. Like I love them. And I saw a man, I met a man behind one of the stands, and he was all shy. And he asked me what I did, and I started to tell him about how our minds are made up, our reality is made up from our minds, and all these mad things kept coming out of my mouth that I had never said to anybody, and I didn't even know what I was saying. And I just blathered on, almost like speaking in tongues. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, blah, blah, blah. And this poor man was pinned against the wall. And he said, this is amazing. What is this thing? This is amazing. And I said, it's this thing. It's called the 3 principles. I don't really know what it is, but this is how, you know, this is how it works. And he said, well, I'm a forensic psychologist. And he was personally in recovery himself, and he ran a recovery group in a town close to me, Coventry. And he said, you have to come and speak to my group. And he ran a group in those days. I don't know what it's quite like now, but AA is the, you know, the sort of number one go-to recovery place. And then there's some others, but there's some hierarchy, you know, like people in AA don't think that you should do any other sort of thing, and there's all that. But he was very much like, everyone has their own path. So you have to come and talk to my group. I'll come and see you tomorrow. And he came and saw me, and we talked for 3 hours, and he kept throwing psychological theoretical frameworks at me, saying, yeah, but what about this, you know, what about when Jung said this, and what about when so and so. And I'd be listening going, and I said, I don't know about that, but I know this. And then all of a sudden I started spurting out again all of this stuff about how our experience is created in our own minds, and then we live in it, and then we feel it, and then it becomes true, and so on. So he wanted me to go and talk to his group. So I ended up going and volunteering with him for another 12 months, coaching people, and lots of people all of them were in recovery in all walks of life. I mean, that's the one thing that taught me, is that addiction, in those days, this is how I thought about it. Addiction is, it doesn't have any prejudice. It can get anyone. It doesn't matter if you've had a great parenting. It doesn't matter if you had terrible parenting. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a multi-million-pound organization, or if you work in Tesco. It's just, if you anybody can become addicted. And I realized how, across the board it was, but it's not really talked about. And it, people blame themselves and all sorts of things. Anyway, I have a son who's now 33, and he suffered with addiction at the age of 13. He was doing hard drugs and drinking, and obviously skipping school and stealing from me and so on. And I'm quite old, so back in the day, I didn't know of any help that you could get. So we went through that alone. I was raising him on my own, and all the things that I read about addiction being a disease and all of those things just didn't help. They didn't help either of us. And then all the things I read about damage limitation, like teach them about this drug. Well, he knew more about drugs than me. Well, there was no point in me trying to pretend I knew. Ask Frank, we had in those days. So I had personal experience of that, and my mother sadly was an alcoholic as well. So I have personal experience of addiction, and I have personal experience of my own dependencies in the past. So I was really intrigued by all of this, and by seeing that these people, through just conversations and listening, were having insights that were changing their lives. And I honestly kept thinking how amazing they were and wonderful. And a couple of things happened. One was, one day, this is after like 2 years of volunteering in the community. I was obviously working as well. I realized, if they're all of these amazing things, and they're resilient and they have all this potential, I must too. And so I feel like they taught me the principles that actually I could see it in them, but I could never see it in myself. I could see that everyone has potential, but I had loads of insecurities in my own life. And they taught me that all of that goodness must be inside me too. So that changed. And there's lots of moments along this journey that changed everything for me and deepened my understanding. And just to revert back, so I ended up then deciding I want to do this for work. I want to be in this life. I want to be of service. So I set up a non-profit, and I ended up getting a prison contract and working in prison. And I'd been doing that work for nearly 12 months when I had a conversation with somebody. There's a body called the 3PGC, and they were vetting me to be a member. And they said, I'm so glad you didn't like it when you first came across it, because then you would, that's why you had such a big insight in the park. And I said, what insight? What do you mean? And they said, that thing that happened in the park, that was an insight, when you had that overwhelming feeling of love. It was a spiritual awakening. It was an insight. And I couldn't speak for 2 days. I never even knew. And so what some of the elders, as we lovingly call them, have said is that the feeling just happened and I followed the feeling. So I always say I'm a slow learner. My feeling is always ahead of where I'm at, and then I catch up, you know. So that's how I ended up working in the prison system and so on. To come directly to the conversation about, you know, what is addiction and how do we cope with it? There's so many strands here. So I think the first thing that I want to say is that with me on my journey with my son, the day that I realized that his well-being is nothing to do with me was the biggest gift ever, because I've spent, I mean, and this was recently, this was 5 years ago, you know, or even less than that. I've spent 27 years of his life trying to make him happy, trying to keep him safe, trying, you know, dealing with drug dealers and giving him money and, you know, doing all the things that to me were just trying to create a safe environment for him, but really were because I felt somehow that it was my job to make him well, to have him have a good life, to realize his potential. And I spent 3 days with him. He was having a crisis, and I spent 3 days with him, and he had some insights, but my biggest insight was, oh, it's not my job. It's not my job is to love him, but I can't do anything about his well-being. He has that already. And coupled with that was the realization that, and he has everything he needs for a wonderful life. It might not look the way I want it to look, or the way that I think is healthy or anything else, but he has all the wisdom he needs to be able to grow and to find his own solutions. And I took my hands, and bearing in mind, I'd been around this work, I'd worked with hundreds of people at this time, and then there I was still meddling in my son's life, you know, still trying to fix him, still trying to make things better, innocently, because that's just what I thought I had to do. And so there's an area, anyone dealing with people, in especially close people in their family with addictions, is to look to your own well-being and look to seeing that the well-being is within them, even when we can't see it, you know, even when to us it doesn't look like that. Excuse me. And then the second part of addiction is, would you be willing to play a little game with me? Okay. So have you heard of the game Simon Says?
Yeah.
So yeah, so you do whatever Simon says, or Mama J says. So if Mama J says clap your hands, you clap your hands, and so on. And if I don't say Mama J says, then you don't do the thing, the action. So we'll do this little game. So Mama J says, put your hands on your head. Mama J says, clap your hands. Mama J says, wriggle yourself. Mama J says, put your hands on your nose, over your mouth. Oh, well done. No, we can't see Karen, so, but well done. Okay, most people in a bigger room, some people would have put their hands on their mouth.
Right.
And that's because we are hardwired to find shortcuts. So our brains are hardwired to find a shortcut. So if you're playing a game like that, eventually, and maybe I should have gone on for a bit longer, eventually the brain says, oh, we just need to copy what she does. Forget the words, right? So people copy because that's a shortcut. So we do shortcuts all the time. When you walk into a room, we know where the door is. We don't have to suddenly go, where's the door again? Like, we already know how to get out the room, and so on. So our brain is always creating the amygdala, the lizard brain is always creating shortcuts for us. They're helpful and they're useful. But what it does do as well is it's easy to create habits. So the brain, that shortcut method says, for instance, I'm feeling terrible, I'll have some chocolate. I feel good. Do that 2 or 3 times. The brain just says, chocolate, next time I feel terrible, right? Or cake, or whatever your tipple is. So that little story there shows us that the brain wants to create habits, wants to create shortcuts all the time. So an addiction is an extreme example of that. So then we move on to, is this okay, by the way? Okay. Then we move on to how addiction becomes embedded. So if you think of, I normally do this on a diagram, but if you think of, we have thought. So you all know enough about thought now to know that thought comes and goes. It only has meaning. It's always neutral. It only has meaning that we attach to it. We don't even know we're attaching to it. It's just happening automatically in our minds. But there are thoughts that come and go, and there are thoughts that we latch onto and go round and round. So a thought comes into our mind, and it's a thought that we've attached something to. So we feel something. So if I have the thought of feeling threatened, for instance, so, I feel scared or I feel threatened. I have a thought. Let's see, I see some youths on a corner. I see some youths on the corner. I could have the thought, oh, they're scary. They're going to get me. I have to keep safe. And bear in mind as well, there is never, ever a problem with any reaction or any thought that we're having. It's innocent. We're doing it innocent. So when I have that thought, it isn't because I'm being prejudiced against those youths on the corner. It's innocent reaction to maybe something happened to me before. So anyway, I have that thought. I get this feeling of being scared. Now, if I don't like that feeling, it's horrible, because it's horrible, right? I used to be jealous. So I used to get the feeling, my husband would say, I'm going somewhere, and I would immediately get insecure and question him and do all of these things, because I was insecure, because I was scared. Not because, innocently, I was just scared because inside I didn't feel good enough. And so I'd have that thought. I'd have these horrible feelings. If anybody's ever felt jealousy, it's not a nice thing to feel. I'd have these horrible, all-consuming feelings. And then I would take a drink, because that would calm me down. So then I go, oh, right, mad rage, that's also an action. Mad rage, get it out of my system. Take a drink, make me feel better. So you've got thought, you've got the feeling, you've got the action that we take to get out of it, and then you've got relief, right? So the anger would make me feel relieved for a little while, and then I'd feel guilty, beat myself up. And the drink would make me feel a little bit better for a little while. And the hook of addiction is when we think that the action creates the relief, because the brain's doing the shortcut thing. So it goes, you last time you felt like that, you had a drink. Here you go. Get some wine, get some heroin, get some chocolate, go for a run. It doesn't have to be horrible things. It can be anything. Work more, have sex. It's like all of these things. They're just innocent ways of coping with the feeling. And the hook is because it looks like to our brains that the relief came from that. The truth is, have you ever been in a situation where you've really wanted something, and then, like, I don't know if anybody else likes chocolate or is it just me? Okay, yeah. Yeah. So have you ever been in a situation where you've crave chocolate, and then you get it, and then you don't eat it straight away? Just the fact it's there in the fridge waiting is enough, right? Makes you feel better. That's the same if you talk to heroin addicts, if you talk to alcoholics. Sally, a client of mine, her story is written up. She would she nearly died several times from alcoholism. And she would go to the shop, she would be shaking, she would have all the DTs, she would be in a terrible mess. She would buy the wine, and she would say as soon as she held that bottle of wine, she felt better. So there's something there to get curious about, because she hasn't taken the drink. So forget all the physiological things that happen to us in addiction, but she hasn't taken the drink. She feels better because she's holding it. Heroin addicts have told me the same. So what is that? Well, the relief and the holding of the bottle, all of that, it's just that thought's gone now. That jealous thought has moved on. Now I'm on to something else now. And I haven't noticed that that's what's creating the relief, because it looks like it's the action that I've taken, the run or the chocolate or the drink. I haven't noticed that there is an actual correlation between the relief and the thought moving on, because it looks like the thought, I can't do anything about the thought's there, it makes me feel like this, I have to do something. Actually, thought is transient, right? It always moves on. And so people get hooked into addiction because they believe that what they're doing is going to make them feel better. And you can't tell me, well, you know it's bad, or you know that look at smokers. You can't tell a smoker, here's a packet with gums on it, and you know all of these things that we try to do to stop people from smoking. But when they want to stop smoking, they do. Nothing that we do, you can't tell me, well, that's going to make me, you know, fat or not run properly or have spots or whatever it is that chocolate does to me. It's only if I see it differently that I'll be able to stop. And the way to see it differently is to understand how the principles work and to be open. And the more that we understand like how our life is being created, the more chance we have of seeing something differently. So I'll just pause there. I've sort of talked a lot. I'm sorry.
Beautiful, Jacqueline. That was so wonderful to hear. I have never heard your full story.
Wow.
How you got into, I knew that you created this nonprofit.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Wow. A labor of love. I know what it entails to create a nonprofit. Yeah. Beautiful story.
Thank you.
But I want to, open it up for any questions for you.
Was it helpful, Gina?
It really was, and it made so much sense. I think on some level, well, you always get the advice, you can't change the addict. They have to want to change themselves and everything, but putting it in that perspective of thought. And now that I understand this more, I knew that his thinking was getting the best of him, but there was nothing I could do to help him to prevent it. And believe you me, I tried, do you need groceries? Do you need this? Do you need that? Trying to make life easy so he didn't have those worries and concerns. But at 40 years old, he's going to have those worries and concerns anyways, right? I'm not working. I can't make money. I can't take care of myself. And letting that eat at him. You have to wonder. So my next thing is keeping my mouth shut about when he calls about, it's just your thought, because he's going to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't get it. So that's what I'm learning right now is to take that step back, like you said, and know that it's all up to him, and I can't even teach him the principles unless he's open and ready, and whether he realizes he's open and ready or not. I did ask him if I could send him the Serenity Principle. And he said yes, but I think that was just to kind of pacify me. So I'm learning to take those steps back. But no, everything you said made perfect sense.
I tell you what really helped me, Gina, was getting really curious, genuinely curious about him. And when I had the retreat with my son, and I had to keep putting my mom head off.
Right.
So, you know, the agreement was, you know, I said to him, well, I'll do it, but I'll have to keep taking my mom head off, because my mom head automatically comes in with all of that stuff. And it did, you know, like during the conversation, I kept having, well, no, but, and then I had to keep stepping back from that. And what I did with that was I just got curious. So I just thought to myself, what I think he's saying is my assumption. What's he really saying? What's underneath that? Tell me about that. Let me try and understand you. Not from, I want to fix you, but I just would really like to understand you. I really want to, I don't really care where you are in life. I don't really care, you know, if all of these things, of course I care, but it isn't my inclination to try and save that. My inclination is to really get to know you and understand you, which I maybe haven't done for X number of years. And I can tell you that I have the most beautiful relationship now with my son. We've gone from, I could go months without hearing from him, months and months. And then I could speak to him and he would say, yeah, no update. And I would know nothing about what's going on in his world. And we've gone to now, we're nearly in touch daily. We do video updates. We run a channel, a YouTube channel together. If we go a few days without talking, we're like, what's going on in your world? Our relationship has totally changed and deepened and got deeper and deeper and deeper. And it came from the moment of not trying to fix him or make him feel better, which I you know, we say it a lot. It is innocent, and it God knows I understand it. But the minute that I could get curious and like, well, let me understand that. What do you mean by that? Let me see about it in a loving way. You'll see things about him that you don't know right now. And you may get to understand some life decisions, you may not, but you'll certainly have a different feeling in the relationship, which is what you're looking for. Because if you have a different feeling with him, other things will come, and we don't know what those things will be, or if he'll change or won't change, anything like that. But what we do know is that from that place, that soul to soul connection, you're going to have a different experience of him, and he's going to have a different experience of you. Don't try and teach him the principles. You're absolutely right on about that. Don't even go there. I wouldn't even send him any more books. I would keep looking to, he has wisdom. I can't see it, but I know he has to have it, because everybody has it. And sometimes, like when I'm in a room, you know, full of 15 hairy, scary men, I'll sometimes say, you know, like, who's got wisdom? And they'll go, no, what is it? Or, you know, not me, or whatever. And I say, whoever had the thought, I'm not going to go out robbing tonight, I've got a bad feeling. Or whoever had the thought, I'm not going to sell to him, he's a copper. And 15 hands go up, and they all say, yeah, well, if we listened to that, we wouldn't be here, miss. Because And I say, that's wisdom. We don't listen to it. It's not like, I mean, it is, but I say it's not like some special magical thing that's going to change your life. It's normal. And you've been hearing it all your life. I've been hearing it all my life. Sometimes I follow it, sometimes I don't. And sometimes there can be learning in not following it. So I teach them to understand what wisdom is, and you can look for that in him. You could start looking for, in the conversation, where do you see his wisdom speak up? And the minute you start to show people, it's like tapping him on the shoulder and saying, oh, look, it's there. The minute you start seeing that, they start to see it themselves a little more, and it opens that aperture. So I see that our job is to listen, to love, and to look for wisdom.
Right.
And
to know. That's the thing for me, is knowing that he's perfectly healthy. He just doesn't know it.
Yes.
And I think I've said it to Lori before. When I'm pushing and I'm, saving, and I'm doing everything I can to save him, I'm giving him that message that I don't think he's healthy either. And I don't think that he can do it. So
yes, brilliant. And even just that switch, even already the fact that you see that changes the energetic relationship between you. And be really gentle with yourself, Gina. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. So, be gentle with yourself and notice your own wisdom and the fact that you've seen that. We're always looking for more. We're always looking for bigger. We're always looking for better. But actually, the fact that you can see that, that's huge. Acknowledge that. Acknowledge yourself. And I feel that that's the gateway to seeing more, because when you acknowledge and you're grateful for what you've already seen, which is big, because you could go for years and not see that and still go, what's everybody talking about? I'm just doing what I'm meant to be doing here. That gratitude and that acknowledgement helps. It just helps. It just creates this stronger feeling that you understand the wisdom inside you, and then that therefore the wisdom's inside him. Just him and you haven't seen it for a while, that's all. But it's there for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate you for being so open. It's so rich. Amazing. And you're doing a great job.
I'm learning.
We all are. Always. How are you, Karen? You're on mute.
I really much enjoying this, just listening to your story and how you look at things. Lori knows I have my follow-up visit with my doctor today for 6 months out, and I've lost a good chunk of weight, and she's just like blown away. And how the principles have helped me with it. Just my relationship with food is very different.
Wow.
So, and it was good hearing you put the words around it. So that was really nice.
Nice.
I very much enjoyed this video today.
Oh, good. Thank you. It wasn't what I was expecting, but I've loved it.
I'm learning it's never what we were expecting.
Oh, yeah, that is so true. That is so true.
Yeah, there's so much I could ask, I could say. Well, I do have a question. I'm used to the recovering stories I hear are those who went to 3 Principles recovery centers, right? The one in New Hampshire, the one in the Gulf Coast of Florida, Gulf Breezes. But I'm not used to hearing recovery from traditional recovery centers, or at least after they've been to several.
Yeah.
So what do you make of that, Jacqueline? But your first exposure was with somebody this, he was working in a university, I think you said?
Yeah,
And he did have recovery.
Yeah, he had recovery already. So he had recovery, and he and I actually don't speak now. He doesn't think that I should teach people about this because he thinks that the only way is NA, you know, like that's that. So I did get a lot of pushback from the recovery community. But my very first client, Sally, that I mentioned, she'd been in 8 rehabs. She'd spent all her money. She'd, you know, the usual story, she'd lost everything, and so on. She'd managed to keep hold of her little house and her dog, but she lost her job, she lost her friend, she lost everything, as one does when we follow that path. And she'd been in 8 rehabs. She was desperate to be different. She started drinking when she was 5 years old. And so, you know, she was a pretty entrenched alcoholic, but she was functioning, you know, at the time she'd had a really good job and stuff. So anyway, her last rehab in December 14, she really did well in the rehab. She went to a rehab where she could take her dog. She's got very fond memories of it. It was all AA based. But she came out in January 15 and she thought, I'm sober, but my life's over. Because how can I live? I'm so unhappy and depressed and anxious all the time. So she was determined to not drink, but she was living with this anxiety and depression and insecurities. And the guy that I mentioned, he introduced me to her and said, maybe you can help. And she came once a week. I saw her once a week. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I just listened to her for the first few weeks. And a bit like I was just explaining to Gina, is that I just started to see like, oh, look how you handled that situation. That's good, isn't it? That's different. That's new. And it was nothing really to do with what I was doing. I was just seeing like, no, you think that you always get anxious in these situations, but hey, you handle this in this different way. So I was pointing out to her where I could see she was doing well in her life. And when she started coming, she was like a dowdy old woman. She's younger than me. She's like 10 years younger than me. She was this dowdy woman, didn't wear any makeup, hair all over the place. And she started looking better, you know, like she'd turn up and she'd done herself up and was smiling and laughing. And the way she tells it is that after a few weeks, I sort of drip the principles. So I never told her about the principles. I just listened. I loved, and I looked for wisdom. And I would then say to her, like, can I talk to you a bit about like how addiction works or how thought works, or, you know, and we would have a little conversation about that. But the most of the conversation was about her downloading and then me pointing out where she'd done well. And week on week, she did better. And I mean, even I was shocked because she was my first client. She used to pay me £25 a session because she wanted to pay, and that's what she could afford. And she was doing better. And I thought, I don't even really know what I'm doing, but I can see she's doing better. And eventually, after, because it was ongoing, you know, after a few weeks, maybe 12 weeks or something like that, she said, you know what, I've realized. She was doing AA and she was going to AA 4 times a week as well at the same time. I never stop anyone from doing other things. If they're guided to do it, then they should do it. And she said, I only ever think about drink when I go to AA. I said, wow, that's interesting.
Talk about an insight, right?
Yeah. And she says, because they spend all night talking about their stories, and I walk away and I really want to drink. and I have drinking dreams. And she said, and I'm not going to, but I've just realized that. I said, wow, you know, what are you going to do about that? She said, well, I'm not going to AA anymore. But she'd been indoctrinated, as they do, to, you know, if you don't come back, you're going to fail, blah, blah, blah. So she was a bit scared about that. So then we had a few sessions around that. You know, I said, well, you know, when you're ready to go, you'll go. Let's just talk about it. And she's so that was 2015. It's 2022 now. I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago. She's absolutely thriving. She's never ever had another drink since. She's done a number of free principles courses because she got into it, and she got a job. She ended up working in an addiction company to do home visits for people, and they allow her to talk about the principles. She's just doing so well. And I always remember Sal, because she taught me such a lot. You know, she taught me how to listen. She taught me how to look for where they're doing well, you know, where I can sort of reinforce that. I mean, that's old-fashioned psychology, isn't it? Reinforce when they're doing well. She taught me to really see that people have their own journey, you know, and whether or not they're going to do that, they're going to do that. And just quickly, I've been working with somebody recently, and he was sober for 565 days on Christmas Day, and he'd had a lifetime of drinking, alcohol and drug addictions. He'd had very, very traumatic childhood, which I won't go into, but you know, think of the worst traumas, he had them, and he self-medicated with drink and drugs. And a couple of years ago, he'd had enough, the voices in his head and everything, and he tried to jump off a bridge in London, and there happened to be a policeman, and the policeman grabbed him and saved his life. And they went back to his house, and he talked to him for about 3 hours, and he lived, but he was unhappy. You know, he knew that his life couldn't, he self-harmed the whole of his life. So on Christmas Day, he was 565 days clean. He's doing really well. His wife and kids are back in his life. You know, he's sort of really thriving. He's actually got his own business. He works with his cousin, who's been very tolerant over the years. And he lapsed. On Christmas morning, he decided, everyone's having a drink, why shouldn't I have a drink? And he had a drink. But of course, he's got a habit, remember the amygdala, he's got a habit that says, oh, yes, I remember this, do this, drink, drink, drink. So he can't have one drink. So he polished off a couple of bottles. He ended up reaching out to me, ended up falling out with me. You know, it's like a nightmare. It was a mess on Christmas Day. And hasn't had another drink since. The very next day, he was all contrite and writing to everyone and so on. And he's in quite a few groups with me. And people were saying, well, hey, you know, so what? Learn from it, move on. You know, sad to hear that, but it's one day out of 565. Like, why now do you have to throw it all away then? And so on. And he's writing a book, and someone said, oh, this would make a great chapter in your book. Anyway, obviously we made up, and it's all in the past. He is better now than he was when he was 565 days sober, because he learned something valuable that day. He learned, I can't drink, and I probably can never drink again. So, because sometimes people think, well, you know, because you're over with the free principles, that means that you can have a drink then. Well, no, you know, we've still got our habits and our inclinations and so on. Some people can never have another drink, or never have whatever it is that they want to have. Some people can. It depends on where you're coming from. I don't drink anymore, and I haven't drank for many years now. But I know that I could drink, and I've occasionally gone, yeah, well, I'll have a sip of champagne, because I have nothing on it. I don't care. I don't care about drink or not. And in fact, the first drink that I had after 3 years sober, it went straight to my head. I had a sip, you know, and it went straight, the buzz. And I thought, oh, what's that? I don't like it. So the buzz that I'd sought, you know, was now, to me, it was boring. I like a clear head and I like the way that I feel. So I'm out of it, you know, I feel neutral about it. So I don't have a problem. But for somebody who's had that habit for a very long time, they might never get neutral about it. Same with drugs and so on. So I could tell you lots of stories, but I'll shut up.
Yeah, what a great story. 2 great stories with the 2 clients. And the woman, you were pointing out her innate health.
Yeah.
Right? It's so
Yeah.
easy for people to not realize that they do hear wisdom and they do utilize that. But when you point it out to them, then they see more and more. That's been my experience. They
For
see,
sure.
they hear their wisdom more and more.
Yeah, they learn to recognize it, and they hear it, and there is a magic, because that it grows exponentially. So when you hear that, when you trust yourself on one tiny little thing, you suddenly open up to a lot of other things without even knowing it. You know, my life changed with me even knowing that my life had changed. It I just felt like, well, like, I thought the 3 principles were rubbish, and yet my life had got really easy. I was dealing with some very difficult, challenging circumstances in a really sort of measured, calm way. I didn't know it had anything to do with anything, because it came from me, right? But as a practitioner, there is to me, there is a joint thing of waking people up to their wisdom. That's first and foremost, is waking them up, pointing them out to their innate health, helping them see that in any way that you can, looking for it yourself. And then if you have the opportunity, which you don't always have, because sometimes that's a client just comes to you for that, and that's that. But if you have the opportunity to also teach them how it works, then that gives them a double whammy, because once you understand how something works, you're less inclined to misuse it. So, you know, if you understand, like I had the paper got stuck in the printer earlier. I was printing out a research paper, and the paper got stuck, and I was looking at the printer and I was banging the printer, and I was thinking, oh, I don't know how to fix it. And then I saw on the screen it had a little, like, a video thing, and I thought, oh, I bet that's a video showing you how to fix it. So instead of banging it and turning it upside down and trying to pull it out, maybe I should watch the video. So I watched the video and I got the paper out, right? In fact, I watched the video the first time. I didn't even watch it. It was on, and then I was looking at the printer and I thought, oh, I didn't even watch the video. To me, that is a good analogy of how it works, because we're blind to it. But I didn't even see there was a video when I was banging it and turning it upside down. And then I took a step back and thought, well, how do you fix this? Like, I don't know how to fix this. And oh, there's a video. Oh, it's like, oh, and I'll follow that. And by me not beating myself up by the fact that I picked it up and banged it and everything, but really appreciating that, so glad I stood back and saw that video. It opens the space for more, and I can trust myself more and know that, oh yeah, I might act like an idiot sometimes, but eventually I see it.
So you brought up taking that step back and then having the wisdom come in. So for me, it's a really big thing right now, because I'm like, okay, I have to make a decision and it's really bothering me. Let me take a step back. And it doesn't always come quickly.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing for me is learning to not poke at it. You know? Not see if that wound is healed yet by poking at it, but by just leaving it alone. And And I hear that so often. That's just a theme across everybody that sees that, taking that step back. And for me, that's still difficult.
For me too. So what helped me is I saw that, I realized that, or someone said, it was Linda Pettit, in fact, said, you can see the same reality differently from a different level of consciousness. And I thought, is that true, really? And I was like, yeah, maybe, but like, how do you get there? Right? Because so I had a situation where a girl who'd been working with me in prison, she was a bit dipsy. She was absolutely gorgeous, but she was a bit dipsy, and she came late. And I mean, there's so many things, there's so many rules if you work in a prison. So she came late, and she didn't bring her, and she came from London, so it's about an hour's drive or an hour and a half drive. She didn't bring her pass, she didn't bring her belt. She did all the things that you're not supposed to do. And she was a seasoned practitioner, so you would, I was annoyed by it. And I already had to start group. So I had a group full of 15 men. I was working with a peer mentor, and she suddenly turns up like last minute, comes into the group, sits in the group, and she's got an issue with the guy that I'm working with. She thinks that he doesn't like her for some reason. So I can feel her thinking in the room. Like, I can see her leg bobbing up and down. I can feel her thinking in the room. I'm struggling to get calm. And I just keep thinking, well, while I'm concentrating on that, I'm not concentrating on these guys. So I did the best job I could. But I was pissed. So I came away, and that was, say, a Thursday. And for the next 4 days, I just thought about all the things that I needed to say to her, all the things that I needed to do, and, the justification and so on. But I'd heard Linda say this about, you can see the same reality from a different level of consciousness. And I thought, I want to give that a go. So every time something came into my head about her, I'd be on it. I'd be like, no, that's coming from the same, because I can recognize the thinking. I can recognize the theme of righteousness, right? So I'd be like, no, I already know that. I can park that. I already know that. And I did this every time. And for 4 days, it occurred to me often, because I was so annoyed. It occurred to me often, and I would go, no. And then on the last day, on the Sunday, it popped into my head again. Yeah, well, I can say this to her and everything. And it felt different. I was like, oh yeah, this is different. But it wasn't. I mean, thought is a sneaky little fucker. And it got in there, right? And I suddenly went, no, you're the same. You're just wearing a different outfit. No, I'm not listening to you. I already know that. I'll park you. And all of a sudden, I had the biggest feeling of gratitude for that woman that I've ever felt. I suddenly felt all the groups that she's been in, all the people's lives that she's impacted, all the times that she's come. We run out of money regularly, and she's come for free. She's put a shift in. She's been amazing. And it didn't come from here, it came from inside. I was so grateful. I felt so grateful. And I remembered all of that in the moment. And guess what? The problem seemed like nothing, because all of a sudden I was in a different level of consciousness. I was in this immense feeling of gratitude and love for her. And then when I looked at the situation, I thought, that's a blip. She knows she shouldn't turn up late. She knows she shouldn't turn up without a pass. She knows she shouldn't sit there in group feeling all angsty about somebody. It's a blip. I don't have to do anything. And I spoke to my mentor about it at the time, and he said, the good news is that even if you did still have to do something, it would have come from a different place then. So if I had looked at that situation then and thought, okay, you know, actually this is what we need to do, it would have been so infused with love and been so different. I would have dealt with it differently. It would have been perfect for her and perfect for the situation. So I would encourage you to just keep doing that, playing with that. And the answers don't come immediately, not for me either. Like they don't, but I am willing to keep looking. Is there something else?
So you just answered it. I know. So when I'm looking for an insight, I'm looking for an answer, right? And you said earlier, your first insight was, I love these people. And then you said just now, your insight was to be grateful. So insight really isn't, it's the answer, but it's not a answer.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Huge. Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Makes me cry. That does. Makes me feel very emotional. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, job done.
You said it. Yeah.
Oh, I've had so much fun with you guys. Thank you.
This is wonderful, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. I have to get used to calling you Mama J. I like that. That's great. The guys named you that, huh?
Yeah, they did. That's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll send you the recording. I'll send everybody on the call a recording, and there's a bunch of other people who wanted to be here, and I'll, midday over here in the East Coast. They're at work, but I'll send them the recording too.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much. It was so good.
And how can we support your programs? How, do you want to email me how to include that? Is there a way we can support Beyond Recovery?
Well, we have donations, so that is one option. Oh, I don't know. I've gone completely blank. I mean, whatever the thing is that we struggle as a social enterprise. We're not funded by the government. We struggle to get funding. We've had to pivot during COVID because prisons aren't open. We've created a distance learning program that we're trying to get out to as many people as possible. And we're setting up a new internship to work with prison leavers and have them be the ones that actually go into the communities and work with their people. So I guess anything that you can do to support that, your loving kindness is obviously helps as well, because that energetically changes things. So and keep in touch.
Yes, I mean, my dream would be to have a similar organization here in Connecticut, in my state.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, I mean, the other way I've just thought of supporting is any good connections, people where I can speak at, or where me and the boys could speak at, or and sort of get to know people, get to know maybe donors, maybe trusts, that type of thing. So connections are good, money's good. And opportunities to speak is good. So anything like that. Thank you.
That's wonderful. All right, now we've got that planted in the back of my mind. Yeah,
that's cute. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right.
Just let people know I do mentor people as well. I work with people, so I take on very few, but I do individual mentoring. and we do listening workshops for businesses. So there's all sorts of things that we do to spread the word.
Wonderful. So you'll give me a link that I could post that it
Yeah.
sounds like you would have all of this in one place on a website.
Yeah. Give you a
Great.
link to the website. Yeah.
Perfect. Send me that, Jacqueline.
All
Yeah.
right then, darling. Thank you so much, girls.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Okay,
Yeah,
lots of
Great
love.
work.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.
Gina. Good luck.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So funny, I'm not seeing how to stop recording. There it is.